Lane. I am the host of the show, and we are going to be talking to one of our sheroes today. And before we get started, I just want to, usually I talk about guests that have been on the show. Today I want to talk about some books that I'm reading that I think you might be interested in. I just picked up the book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and if you want some awesome deep thoughts about life, this book is a wonderful book. Howard Zinn wrote the book, A People's History of the United States. So guys, if you're curious about what the contributions are of the Native Americans, of the indigenous peoples, this book is an eye-opener. If you want to find out what the contributions of the Europeans are, the contributions of all of the people of the United States, this book is a very handy resource. Howard Zinn, both of those books can be picked up at Barnes & Noble. The next one I want to talk about is one of my upcoming guests and a friend of mine, Victor Archuleta, wrote this as his newest book, The Power of Energy Healing. We're going to be going in depth on this book when he comes on the show January 6th or 7th. I am the author of The Caregiver's Handbook, a self-help love story. Any of these books that you're interested in, well, those other ones that I talked about, you want to get at Barnes & Noble, including Victor's book. This book you can get through the station and through me. If you'd like to get an autographed copy, please do reach out. I would be glad to get one to you. In the past weeks, I've been talking about some of the things I've been doing for help, to help people. I've been doing a lot of frequency treatments and therapy, and I've been getting some really good results. Life coaching. Any of you interested in getting, having some therapy? Whether it's for inflammation, for diabetes, or even cancer, I got some new devices coming about being ordered now that I'm really excited about. I really want to help you. So, reach out to me at the station. Also, I'm open for speaking engagements, keynote speakers, introductions. I'm at your service. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Juana Bordas, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is my second appearance. I just wanted to say about that book that you had up about the history of the United States.
Yes.
It's so important that we go back and look at our history. Yes, because we were left out of the history books. That's why we have to have Hispanic Heritage Month just to even talk about who we are.
Yes.
So I really think if you really want to get grounded in being Latino and who we are today, that we got to read, we got to study, and luckily we're at the point where we can do that now because so many of us have gotten an education and are able to read some of these books. But, we got to educate ourselves because if we don't know where we've been and where we've come from, how are we going to know how to advance in the future?
Absolutely.
So I'm so glad you're promoting those books.
When I was a young man, someone said something to me that really impacted me, and it's the reason I'm an avid reader. And an Anglo gentleman told me when I was about 15 years old, he said, "You want to hide money from a Mexican? Put it in a book."
It's true.
And
it's true. But the thing is, I was just recently teaching, and at the universities, over 40% of us are still first generation. We're just becoming illiterate because you have to realize Latinos were colonized twice, once by the Spanish and then by the Anglo settlers.
Europeans. Mm-hmm.
So we've had to catch up in a sense, and we'll talk more about that. But the fact is that we're just beginning to have this intellectual class in our community, people who have been to school. And you don't have to go to school, but you do need to educate yourself. Una persona que es bien educado means that, you've learned enough that you know how to live life. And so it's something that we need to take on for ourselves, and particularly for our children, so that they'll have a strong identity and be able to move forward in this new decade, in this new century, which I believe is going to be the Latino century.
Yes, it is. I say it again and again and again. The most important point on the compass is not north, it's not south, it's not east or west. It's where you are now. And when we find out who we are and the richness of our indigenous culture and our history and our past, and when we find out that it was actually stripped from us and it was actually re-ingrained us, and we were conditioned to believe the things we believe do today. In many ways.
Right. But, the thing is when we look at the 500 years of colonization and that, that we've been here, and we look at the vibrant community we are today, we know that we have assets and strengths, and particularly our community and our culture, it's so strong and it's so focused on people and advancement and new generations and youth and, hard work. And So we're going to make it, and because our history proves it. I mean, Latino leadership has passed the test of time. Here we are, 500 years later, and even though the majority of us are still working class, we're moving up.
Yes, we are. You know, we're starting to see them names in the House of Congress and in Senate, and we're starting to see the legislators and judges, and we're starting to see not just educators anymore. Now we're into that upper echelon, and where we can start doing that networking and getting our place where it needs to be, where it's supposed to be.
But every single person that's listening, it's the responsibility of all of us.
Yes, it is.
We all have to be engaged, and particularly today when we have so many young people in our community. Half of us that are under 16. So we need to prepare for this future, and we need to get ready for this new wave of young Latinos, millennials and Zs that are coming, and that need to be prepared to be leaders of this century.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that you're one of those, you're a mover and a shaker. When I think of one, I always think of the day you were on our show and you said the term shero. And
Yes.
When I think of that term, your face comes to my mind. What are you doing out, I know you're always active. What are you doing right now?
Well, I just finished up my program year, and it was a great, during the holidays, people don't do too much education and training. But I had a very productive year. I think what I'm seeing, and I'm so blessed that I'm an elder, but I still have the energy and the power and the connections, and people still invite me, to be part of their programs and part of their organizations. What I'm seeing is a whole host of young Latinos now that are educated, that are wanting to be involved, that want to learn leadership and how to be more effective, but also want to know how to maneuver the mainstream culture so that we can keep moving up. And so I am very enthused about our community because of our young people. And what I've been doing, I just finished the proofs this week, is writing a new book, The Power of Latino Leadership Ahora, which means now, because it really is our time. We're at the crossroads of power. And if we really can unify ourselves, which is one of the purposes of my writing, is to create Latino unity, pride, identity, and also for us to understand the great strengths that we have as a community. Mm-hmm. So I included a new chapter on intergenerational leadership, and I'm so proud of our young leaders. We can be proud that the first Gen Z elected to Congress, Maxwell Alejandro Frost, is a Afro-Cuban. And, he says he's dedicated his life to fighting injustice. So those are the kind of young leaders we have coming.
Yes,
there's another one, Richie Torres, who's a congressman from New York, and he says he's here to fight urban poverty. So what I'm seeing is not only a whole host of young Latinos, but Latinos who are saying, we got to fix it so our people have an equal playing ground, so we have an equal chance and opportunity. That's all we want.
Yes.
We just want the level playing field.
What's so wonderful, I think as I see this change, this shift, is like AOC, she didn't come from a millionaire family. She was a bartender. And she, like these other heroes, they came from where we are. And so they're
Maxwell Frost is an Uber driver. No, I mean, the fact is 70% of Latinos are working class. And so, and 47% make under $15 an hour. So we got work to do. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that even with all of these conditions, we are a vibrant community that's kept our positive attitude. We're the most optimistic people in America. And so our time has come, and we've got to get ready.
Yes.
We've got to get ready.
Not only that, we're loyal, we're dedicated, and the hardest working, they always question that the pyramids in Egypt were built by aliens, but not in Mexico. I heard a comedian say that the other day, but we're industrious.
Yeah. Right.
And not only that, we have a cultural pride, and I want to always instill that in young people, and it's important that we don't have shame in who we are and where we came from. My mom spoke Spanish and she got hit in la boca, there's no speaking in Spanish, and so, consequently, none of her kids spoke Spanish. But
that's a great example of the transformation we're going through, because we had 17 states, including Colorado, that passed English only, and now the U.S. is the fastest growing Spanish-speaking country in the world, and only Mexico has more Spanish speakers. Si quieres hablar español, toca el número uno. We will become a bilingual country, and that's an asset. That's something we're bringing to America. The rest of the world understands that the more languages you speak, the smarter you are, the more you can connect with more people. You just have an increased repertoire of who you are with each culture and each language that you learn. So really, Latinos are multicultural. You know, we love different cultures, and we are a blend of different cultures. And so here we are, where Spanish now is one of the 5 competencies that you need in the global age. And we got it, you know, and so people should definitely speak Spanish at home. The majority of Latinos do not want to lose their language. So habla español si puedes.
Yes. You know, I look back on history. You know, I was a diversity instructor when I worked for the utility company here in Colorado, and we really did CRT. We did really in-depth study, and we studied about different cultures that came to this country and how each one of them was oppressed. At one time, there was the population of incarcerated Italians was equal to that of Latinos and blacks right now. But as times changed and they were more assimilated and received within the culture, you know, they were no longer in that lower or perceived lower class. The thing I don't know, I have a theory about why it hasn't changed so much for black and brown people, and I think that we cling to our culture more than other people, you know. We hang on to who we are. We don't want to release our family values. We want to keep our marriage customs. We want to keep that language as much as we can. And so it's been detrimental to a degree, but now it's, like you say, it's an asset, and now it's something wonderful because we are clinging to that, and we are proud of that, and we're expressing it, you know?
Well, I don't even think it's that for sure, but I also think if you look at what is happening in America today, and you look at our culture, you know, a lot of people believe that we're going to revitalize the American dream. I mean, that's who we are, just like this whole country was settled by immigrants other than our Native American relatives that were here. So what you're seeing is that we're now beginning to understand that these cultures, whether it's the black or the Hispanic or the Native American or Asian, that we're bringing certain assets and certain contributions to America that America needs. We're going to transform America. Oh, yes. We're going to make America more inclusive. We're going to make America harder working. We're going to make America more generous because mi casa su casa. You know, we're not materialistic cultures. We're people-oriented cultures. Yes. We're going to make America more politically engaged because we only got here through our political and engagement and leadership. So there's a lot of things. We're going to make America more global because we come from all these different countries. So all the changes that are taking place in this century, we really are going to be able to be leaders in those arenas. And so what we're seeing is the transformation from us being minorities to us being, I think, the antidote, we're going to make a contribution. We're not going to assimilate. We're going to bring our values with us.
Yes.
And that's what should happen, because then it's an add-on process. We can be thankful to the Anglos for what we have learned and their contributions, certainly the industrial age and all the material things we have. But at this point, we need to bring back balance, you know? We need to put people first, not things.
Yes.
And that's what our cultures are all centered on. And that's how we got here. We got here through taking care of each other.
Yes, and it all comes through education.
Yes, education was one of the big keys there.
Have you seen the John Leguizamo special, History for Latinos?
Yes, yes. I recommend that in my books because, you know, humor is so important. And again, we don't know our history. You know, there were 62 million, they think, people here when the conquistadors and the white settlers arrived. It was not a pristine land. There were cities, and Mexico City had more people, and it was a bigger city than any city in Europe. And so now we're beginning to get our population back because there's 62 million Latinos in America today. So what we're saying now is it's been 500 years, you know, but here we are now. We're a vibrant culture. We're a young culture. We're a hardworking culture. We represent so many different races and faces and countries, and we're really ready to be the leaders of the multicultural age that's coming. You know, the majority of kids whether minority or whatever, the majority of kids identify as multicultural today, according to the last census. So it's coming, and we're there. We're already there.
Yes, very, very exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Another book that I'm listening to right now is 1491.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Oh my goodness, I stumbled on it. Someone mentioned it, and I got it ordered on Audible, and man, I look back at when the conquistadores came in, and they were so amazed, and they really didn't talk about it as much as I think they might have, or they probably did in the early days, but the majestic, everything, the developed culture they found. No civilization had ever developed the concept of zero. Like the book 1491 says, well, on the one side they highly successful in the mathematical and astronomical and anatomical and all these different fields, but they didn't have the wheel. And it's just an interesting dynamic that I was listening to.
Well, but there's other things in that book that I think are so important. Like one is that there was no disease in this hemisphere.
Absolutely.
I mean, here you have the Europeans coming, and they've had plagues. They're coming in with cholera and different diseases.
Yes.
And the American Indians, our native relatives, were not. We had a very healthy, we took care of each other through curanderas and shamans, and so we had a very healthy culture. Second of all, they also didn't have good nutrition, and we were the great agriculturalists. If you look at the Aztecs and the Incas and all the food, the Incas had 3,000 pounds of potatoes. Mexico had like 2,000 pounds of chili. I mean, potatoes, chilies, tomatoes, squash. All of the cuisine in the world, we gave that. And so there's so many gifts that we gave to the world, and yet because we have been left out of the history books, we got to go back and read 1491, which tells you what was here before the conquest, what was here before the white settlers came. And, why do we want to do this? Well, it's important to reconcile your history. But how are we going to know the greatness of our cultures if we think that we were savages, or that we didn't have any language, which we did. We had language, we had books, we had all that. And so it's important for us to stand on our history and say, no, we've had these great traditions. And luckily for us, because most of the culture came through Indian mothers and Spanish fathers, we kept our culture, we kept our communities, we kept our homes. And so we still have those vibrant values that were left by our indigenous relatives.
Awesome.
Yes.
I remember sitting at the table having many conversations with my mother, who's deceased, and realizing that my mom was really robbed of her history, of her culture. She had no idea of the things that I was able to teach her, to share with her, to open up her eyes, and to, she always said, don't you ever call yourself a Chicano? And I said, I am a Chicano.
Right.
And, and I tried, I finally got to where I was able to explain to her why I feel so strongly that that's the verbiage that I want to describe me, because I'm proud of that, and that's, it's culturally rich, and it's nothing to be ashamed of or look down on.
No, but in my writing, I do talk about the psychology of the oppressed, because what happened, my mother was embarrassed about being an Indian. She thought Indians were dumb. Seriously, she thought education was the key, but she thought, that because we could go to school now, that there was, that we would become quote unquote educated. But the fact is that, we've always had an educational system. It's just been different. We are an oral tradition culture. We like to tell stories. So, for example, the psychology of depression is that you begin to believe what the majority of society says about you. I don't know if everybody remembers the old lazy Mexicans. Well, how can we be lazy when we have the highest participation of any group in the labor market, and we're responsible for 75% of the new entries into the labor market in the last century? We love to work.
Yes.
We think work is a way to contribute. We think work is a way to give back and to take care of our families and to make a contribution. And so, but we were told lazy Mexicans, or we were told we were stupid because, you know, I walk into a school, I'm 6, 7 years old, I don't understand the language, well, of course I'm not going to look as smart as I realized I was later after I became, you know, educated in both systems. And so we begin to believe it, you know, and then we look at our community and say, oh, you know, we're not that smart because we're working class. Well, yeah, we're working class. We haven't had the opportunity to get the same privileges and education that other groups have had. So we need to resolve that. Part of our transformation is looking at ourselves as well. You know, I grew up an immigrant. I was poor. I was a girl growing up in the 40s and 50s. My mother had a 5th grade education. You know, here I am in the body, or in a sense. And yet, when I looked at my own history, when I looked at what my mother had achieved as an immigrant with a 5th grade education, working in a school lunchroom, serving food, cleaning floors, washing dishes so that I could become an educated person. What I see now is that I came from greatness. I came from people who worked. And, you know, I said Latino leadership is not a marathon, it's a relay race. You know, my mother handed the torch to me, I've handed it to my children, hopefully they'll hand it to their children. And we've been moving paso a paso, little by little, each generation with a vision that the lives of their children are going to be better.
Yes.
And so we have to stand on that now and say, no, we came from greatness. We came from people who had a vision. We came from people who left a legacy, which is the greatest thing a leader can do, is to prepare the next group to go on and go forward.
Yes.
And I think each one of us has to work on that transformation, because the psychology of the oppressed was that I didn't think I was very smart.
Internalization
I didn't think I was very smart.
Yes.
I thought I had to work 3 times as hard to just even get it, you know, and the same thing. I was embarrassed about my family because we didn't have the right clothes. We didn't live in the right neighborhood. You know, I had to wear clothes that my sister made me. She would sew for me and make my clothes. And so, you know, it's all of that. But we need to heal ourselves first so that we can say, no, I come from a community that has always cared about the future, that has always contributed, that has always been generous, that has always had a deep faith, that has believed that we would someday advance. And I say that day is now.
I'm with you, man. I think it's just awesome. You know, it's one of the reasons that I come on this show, because I want to spread the word. I want to open people's eyes, and I want help people to become aware. You know, the term I was thinking of, internalization of inferior status, and that's what's happening.
Exactly, that's what I was talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And so.
And then once you do that, then you're kind of hostage.
Yes.
Because you believe that you can't succeed, so you don't try as hard, right? So, you know, so it's really important that we do that healing work.
Yes.
Because in that way we can embrace our power, embrace our culture, embrace our history, embrace our future, and begin looking at unity. Because one of the other things that came out of the psychology of the oppression is that we believed other Latinos were also inferior.
Oh man,
that's us.
Yes.
And so, and you also had the whole media thing, whereas if somebody did succeed, instead of saying, hooray, one of us made it, we would say, oh, well, they forget where they came from.
Who does she think she is? You don't belong here. That's not for you.
Right. And so we need to really change all of that, because we do have an educated class now. We are having people that are moving into the middle class and above, and we need to celebrate that, and we need to keep lifting others and making sure other people have the opportunities to be able to do that. You know, I see a lot of hope in our young people. Our young people today, you know, I just did in my chapter, I looked at how they lead, and they really are looking at change, you know, because they have things like climate change to deal with. They have things like housing where they can't buy a house. They have things like college debt that they have to pay, you know, whereas I was able to work my way through college. They can't because it's too expensive. And they have all kinds of concerns about the future. And so I think it's really time for us to help our young people and to work with them to create a better future. It's not okay that on my watch, the future is going to be not as good for my children and my grandchildren as it was for us, you know? We have to change that.
Yeah, that's such a spot on. Yes. Guys, if you're just joining us, you're watching KUHS The Stream on Melody Drive. This is the Weekend Boost. I'm your host, Paul Lane, and we are talking to community activist, local hero, shero, and just a dynamo, someone who I just always admire. We were at an event the other day, and there's a stage there, and I see her jump up there. It's like, man, that just fired me up. Juan Bordas. And let's talk about your book. Tell me a little bit about, what things about your book really get you excited?
Well, I have to tell you that the reason I wrote my book is I'd been in the leadership field. I had been running an organization called the National Hispano Leadership Institute to try to get more Latinas into higher level leadership. Now, studying leadership is cool because, we need to know what they know, and then we need to know how our leaders are different and in a sense relate to our community. So I was encouraged to write this book, The Power of Latino Leadership, because there's no book on how Latinos have advanced and how we got to where we are today. So I'll give you a few of those principles that are pretty exciting, I think. One of them, of course, is the leader is equal. In other words, in our community, no matter, and I see it, my mentors like Bernie Valdez lived in a little house beneath the Bronco Stadium. Angel Garcia Haynes lives down the street from me. I live in the same house I've lived in for 42 years. You don't see our leaders, the ones that really are committed to our community, taking on or going for leadership for power or for money. No, it's the leader is equal. I have to stay a part of my community. I have to stay myself, or people can't, number one, identify with me, but number two, say I can do that too. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? That's the point of it. I can do that too. I'm an immigrant. I came over here when I was 3 or 4 years old. Guess what? I did it. They can do it. I want my life to be an example, not an exception. I can do that too. That's my message, and that's the message of Latinos. And the way we do that is by staying as the leader as equal. In the old days, the leader was the hierarchy. They were dominant. They were in charge. They were better than. They got paid more. And all of that stuff. It was more of a leadership by the few. But we believe that everybody is a leader, and that when you get to be a leader, that you treat everybody with respect. You know that everybody has something to contribute. You get to know them as an individual. You show them that personalismo that we have in our community, And then what happens is the second principle, which is called leadership by the many. Because Latino leadership is not leadership by the few. We all have to do this.
Wow.
Our leadership is going to be when all of us are engaged, when we're doing whatever we can do at our church, at our school, in our community, at our work, civic engagement, political engagement, because our theory of leadership is that we're going to lead through critical mass, through the numbers. And it's really beautiful because now, even when I listen to the radio or I look on TV, you're beginning to see so many Latinos. So our leadership is not a few leaders. It's not one big leader. It's everybody doing their share, building a leadership cadre across our communities. And then the third principle I'll share now, and then we can get back to some other stuff, is si se puede. Because we represent people in the margins, because we represent people that are working class, because we represent people who have been discriminated against, we need to have an activist form of leadership that's actually challenging the status quo in a sense. And we don't really have to challenge it, we just have to transform it.
Transform, yes.
Which transform means you bring the word with you, and then you add to it, and you create something new that includes everybody.
And you have an enriched little product.
Yeah, and our leadership is bienvenido. It's inclusive. We invite everybody to work with us in creating a humanistic, inclusive world that welcomes the gifts and the values and the histories of all people.
Yes.
And that's really what we stand on, because that's who Latinos are.
That's
we welcome people. So our leadership is very different. It's very needed today in America. But until I wrote this book, nobody had really, and it took me 5 years, by the way, and a lot of us can't do that. I am fortunate that I'm an elder now, that I have the time and the experience and the support to be able to do that because I've been in the leadership field. But it's an important and critical book for Latinos to read if they want to understand our history, our culture, our leadership, and where we're going. Because my vision is Latino Destino, the future of Latinos in America.
Very good. Manifest destiny to our ancestors was genocide. It was not a good thing for us.
Right.
And now we're almost at a new manifest, and it's not so detrimental. It's not so exclusive. It's like you say, it's inclusive, and it's perpetual, and it's optimistic, and it's positive, and it has so many good virtues that I get more excited every time I talk to you, Juana.
Well, and the thing is, we're the only community that is not race-based. I mean, we are an ethnic group. We have all the races. In fact, 25% of us say that we're indigenous. That we have indigenous blood. Then we have another third that say we have African blood. 42% of us say we have the European from the Spanish. I mean, and then a third of us are already saying that we're mixed or multicultural. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So I'm Spanish, French, and Indian because my father was French Nicaraguan. So here you have this community that's very diverse, that's very inclusive, that has a vision of de colores, if you want to call it that, of all the colors of the rainbow, all the colors of the beautiful gardens and birds and everything coming together. And I believe that was a prophecy that took place 100 years ago when the book La Raza Cósmica was written, the cosmic race, that Latinos, or it was at that point he was calling us mestizos, we would be the prototype for the new evolution of humanity, because the humanity is evolving into a new format, a new form, a new evolution, where all the cultures will come together in some way, right? And I found it very interesting that there was 1,000% increase in the census of Anglo people that were claiming more than one race. So even in the Anglo community, they're beginning to look because they know their grandchildren are going to be mixed. It's going to happen. There's no stopping this. And it's an incredibly beautiful thing to have all the gifts of all the cultures come together. That's our job. So La Raza Cósmica, 100 years ago, Jose Valenzuela said there's a new bronze kind of race coming, if you want to call it that, a new iteration of humanity that will include the beauty. And he says, take the best with us, the best of every culture, Anglo ingenuity, Hispanic celebration, because that's another thing about our culture is celebration. We wouldn't have got here if we weren't singing and dancing and enjoying life and having fiestas and recognizing everybody and celebrating. So it's that time now, and our children will live in a different kind of society. So we're here to help build that, transform the world.
Very good. Very exciting. So we have a responsibility. I mean, we really, especially being elders, we're going to be the ancients soon. And
I already am.
but I remember being a young kid and going in the family, and then there was the kids, and then there was the adults, and then there was the seniors, and then there was the ancients, and those were the people that, for me, those were the ones I wanted to gravitate to. I wanted to hear their story because, I guess I was really fortunate to always have that curiosity of who am I? Where am I from? What is my root? Tell me, And I think it's a great honor, but it's a big responsibility.
But also your power comes from that.
Yes, it does. And, every time we've been knocked down and every time we've gotten back up, it's a story that we can say, hey, look here. You got knocked down, but it's not the end,
Well, we were actually, during COVID, we were actually essential workers. We were the ones who really, because we were working class, so we were serving food and cleaning and working in the hospitals and taking care of people and everything. So I think we have to just really celebrate the incredible contributions that we've made as a people, and the fact that we still have our faith, our family, our values intact, and that now we're ready to go to the next level. So I think that's really exciting for all of us here.
Man,
I was going to talk a little bit about the role of the elder, because in my book, the book that's coming out, Cesar Chavez Day, I talk about that our community is intergenerational, like you were talking. The elders, the young people, and if you go to a Latino event, the kids are there, so this whole idea of intergenerational leadership is so important today, because 10,000 baby boomers retire every day.
Every day.
I just did a program for Chevron, and we had like 75 people, and I asked different generations to stand up. There were only 3 boomers.
Wow.
in the whole crowd.
Wow.
So we're going through this transition in age. And then, like I said, the millennials and Zs are the largest generation that's ever been in history. So I think that's another contribution Latinos make, is that we are intergenerational. I am very fortunate that as an elder, our younger people still want to talk to me, like you said, that are, that they realize that this is a partnership between the different generations. And I think that that's so important today, because this transition that we're going through is not just Latinos, it's the whole group. And yet when you look at Latinos, since half of our kids under 16 are under 16, half of our population, it even makes it more of an imperative for us.
Man.
How do we bring young people aboard? And that's one of the reasons I've taken to writing, because this book is used in a lot of universities with Latinos and young Latinos. And it's my gift to them, in a sense, to be able to really tap into the past, but also have that vision for Latino Destino, that we're going to be the ones that create the multicultural world, that create a world with humanistic values, that cares about people and takes care of people, and that we're going to be the people that enhance our global connections, because that's who we are. So here we are at the nexus of power, if you want to call it. And so my book helps young people embrace that and say, yes, let's do this. We're going to have the critical mass, the power, the education, and it's going to happen.
Man.
And so that's the exciting part about being Latino today. So there it is.
Do you have a cover of the book that you could show?
Yeah, here's the one the one that we have right now, called The Power of Latino Leadership. It's in Spanish on Amazon as an ebook. I'm going to be, in December, I'm going to be doing an audiobook, so for those that want to read audiobooks. But I will get back to you in March when I do my big book launch with The Power of Latino Leadership Ahora, because that's the one with the intergenerational piece, that's the one with the new statistics that show where we're going. And so it's really exciting. And people can have book clubs or just, share, because there's so much information there that you want to talk with your parents, with your friends, with your boss, and really get this thing going.
And you're also doing this release on an audiobook, I understand, or?
Yes, I'm doing an audiobook. I'm going to record that in December. So it's going to be fun, and I'm just so proud of our community that now we have so many people that are reading. We're actually one of the only groups that where reading is actually going up. I mean, there's more Latinos reading now than in the past. And so I think that's an important way to educate yourself. And like the thing that you talked about, John Leguizamo, with Hispanic History for Morons, that's a gas. It's fun to watch, and there's so many good things on TV now that we can use to educate ourselves.
Oh, man.
And get pride.
Yes, absolutely. They're finding out more and more. Governor Ron DeKlansman over there, he's saying that the natives were the first immigrants, and now they're finding out that we're not 10,000 years old, we're not 20,000, we're in the 40,000 years or older range. We don't even know how long our ancestors have been walking this land, and so immigrant is not a term that it is, but when I talk about our indigenous roots, we're not immigrants. We were here for...
No, we're not immigrants. We met the boat.
That's right. We met the boat. That's right.
We met the boat that came. No, we're not. And again, you talked about manifest destiny. Like, if young people don't know what that is, they need to know. There was actually a government policy that said that we were incapable of self-rule, that it was to our benefit to be colonized. That, it was basically, it gave the white settlers and the Anglos, that God told them to colonize us and to oppress us. So they need to know that, because if they don't understand our past and how we need to heal that and transform it, and how Anglo people do need to take some responsibility of creating the unequal society and the dominant society, and a society where there's the haves and the have-nots.
Yes.
Because that's not how it was on this continent before that.
And if they're not perpetuating it now, they have a responsibility to ensure that it does not perpetuate that behavior in any circle.
Exactly.
We can't sit there and smile at the sexist jokes that we hear. We have to I'm an ally to women. I am, I'm a feminist. I've told
Right.
you before, I want a woman president. I am so sick of the male ego. And, when I see these kind of degrading jokes or comments, I'm not going to be silent anymore.
Right.
And I don't care if
Well,
it's...
we got our first Latina congresswoman in Colorado.
Uh-huh.
And that's very exciting. She's a physician. And so, I mean, when you look at the past elections, where we're actually at 10% in Congress now. We're 20% of the population, so we're halfway there.
And we're moving forward every election.
And it's happening fast. And by the way, there's in critical mass theory, you only need a third to make the change. But once you start getting momentum, it goes faster and faster and faster.
Yes.
That's why I'm saying to people, get ready, because it's going to be happening faster and faster and faster, particularly when we see our young people that are 25 and so forth and so on, and they're digital activists. They're online. Maxwell Frost led March for Our Lives, a national thing. DACA students, national change they brought about. Because the establishment wouldn't help them, wouldn't help the DACA students, so they rallied for that. And we have a lot of the climate change activists are coming out of the young generation. Mm-hmm. So the young generation is really an activist generation. They call themselves change makers. And the interesting thing about the word change makers, which is different than a social activist, change makers believe they're going to do it.
Mm. Wow.
I'm looking up why they call themselves change makers. They call themselves change makers because they believe they're going to win.
Wow. Progress.
And they can because of their numbers.
Oh,
and because of how smart they are. And because they're digital activists. And because they accept everybody. They're already multicultural and global and are on a spectrum as far as gender. So they accept everybody. And so I think it's going to be really interesting. And I am just so grateful that I have been able to live. One of the things I wanted to share with people, particularly young people that might be listening, is that when I started college in 1960 at the University of Florida, there were no other Latinos.
Wow.
I hear there were two that I met later, but I never met them, It was 14,000 students. I was scared to death, going away to college. But here was the interesting thing. When I was 19, I marched to integrate the University of Florida because there were no blacks there either. And so about 5 years ago, I was invited to go back to the University of Florida and address the new incoming freshman class of Latinos. Man. And it was 1,400. So one of the things I want, and it's a Hispanic serving organization now. So one of the things I want young people to understand, and one of the things elders are able to bring to the table, is perspective. Mm. Look how far we've come in 50 years.
Yes.
Women, people of color, Latinos, young people weren't being heard like they are today. And so if they can just think about the fact that paso a paso, we're going to make it, and that it's a lifelong commitment. And most of the young Latino leaders that I'm interviewing understand that. Mm. They say, my life is committed to social justice. And so what we have now is being able to look back on the last 50 and 60 years and say, if we can do that and we can multiply that out into the future through the new generation, we'll be able to create this inclusive and equitable society.
Mm. Let me ask you, Latinos, I don't know, we have this reputation of being inclusive. Why? What makes us so, what is it that has created this spirit of just giving and not leaving people out? Is it because we've had years of exclusion? Is it just because there's a kind of spirit?
I call it in my writing the bienvenido spirit. Mm-hmm. So, the U.S. is struggling today with exclusion and with racism and inequities and all that. But our culture is not, it's different than that. Mm-hmm. So, yourself that if you go, I just invited somebody to Thanksgiving dinner because on the coast of Nicaragua, my uncle had a law that was anybody who didn't have a place to eat, Christmas, we don't do Thanksgiving, but any feast or anything, always had a seat at his table. And that's how we are, Siempre puedes poner otra taza de agua en la sopa. Let's put another cup of water in the soup and everybody eats.
There's room for 10, there's room for 12.
We're very generous, plus we come from tribes and big families. I come from a family of 8, so in the old tradition, we had large families that were like tribes. But anyway, so we have this inclusive bienvenido spirit. Plus, we're mixed. I mean, we already were the Spanish and the Indian, and then my father is French, and we have German blood, we have French blood, we have all these different things. We're a mixed culture, and so that inclusiveness is part of our DNA.
Wow, wow.
Right? I mean, because that's who we are.
That makes perfect sense.
I'm meeting a lot of Latinos now that are doing their DNA, and they're finding out they have Arabic roots, you know, because when we came over, when the Spanish came over, they were already mixed. They had Roman blood, they were Catholics, they were Jews, they were Muslims, they were Anglo-Saxons from the north. They already were mixed people, much different than the Anglo-Saxons. So we have a tradition of being mixed on both sides of our heritage. And this bienvenido spirit also has to do with generosity, mi casa su casa. And if you look at indigenous cultures, you weren't respected or you weren't rich if you owned a lot. You were respected and you were rich if you were able to give, if you were able to share, if you were known to be generous with your time, your ideas, your whatever you had. And so we respect generosity. Mi casa su casa, I think, is the Latino golden rule. What I have is yours. And, you know, if you're sitting there eating with a Latino, they go pruébalo, or they share it, because there's a saying, donde come uno, come dos, that we can always share our food. And if I was sitting there eating and you didn't have, I would feel bad.
Oh, I couldn't do it.
You couldn't do it. You'd have to share your food. So it's just part of our DNA that we share and that we take care of each other. You know, yes, there's the layer of what happened after we got colonized, et cetera, but we're still the most generous people. You know, and we have this whole thing about being simpático, because we're a people culture. You can't be in a people culture and be stingy and have it your way and not share and not take care of people. The whole culture, the matrix of the culture is people, it's community, it's taking care of each other, it's familia, extended familia. And so that's part of our value system. And so that's why we can transform America. Everybody's talking about exclusion, and Latinos are talking about inclusion. Yeah, you know, we're talking about join us, become part of the familia. So I call it becoming a Latino by corazón, that we invite people to become Latinos by corazón, to join with us, to have an affinity with us, and you know, because we've already crossed over to the other side. We've already been to the Anglo schools. We've already learned the Anglo values. I can function in corporations, in universities, in dominant culture organizations and structures. It's time for other people now to cross over to our side and to learn about the wonderful values and things that we offer as a people, and how this is the antidote to the raging materialism and exclusion of the society today.
Yes. Oh, man, I appreciate that so much. I want to talk a little bit about the dark side, and that is envidia.
Yes.
That is something I learned about when I was probably 14 years old, and I always tried to observe it when I would see it, you know, and it's like, it's heartbreaking to see, because, you know, we really have enough challenges, you know, to externally that we need to look within and say, hey, this is not something that I want. Well, let's talk about that.
Well, I mean, I think envidia is again part of the psychology of oppression that we talked about, because if you don't feel good about yourself, and somebody else has more or achieves or you know, is smarter or whatever it is, then you feel bad about you. One of the things I try to do in my work with people is there's a thing called personalismo. Who are you? Like you said, you have to know who you are. And each person really is unique. So I do a lot of work with people on their destino. What makes you unique? You know, like I was the youngest daughter in an immigrant family. And all of my brothers and sisters and my parents poured everything into me so that I could become educated, so I could go to school. So, everything I am, I owe them. You know, but on the other hand, everything I am is unique. Each person is unique. Every leaf, every tree, every grain of sand, every flower, God never makes anything twice. So you can never compete with anybody else, because you're unique and you have a certain purpose in life. You have a certain destino, whether it's to take care of your 5 children, or to be a teacher, or my sister was an incredible seamstress and made beautiful clothes and made women look beautiful. So whatever your calling is, you could be the best waitress that brings the food in a way that nourishes people, and that it forms like a little community at the table because people feel so welcome. So I believe that the antidote to media is, first of all, to get really secure on who you are,
Yes.
and to figure out what is your contribution to make. How can you best serve? Why were you born at this time in history? Like me being born a woman instead of a man, that was very important to my destino, because I started working with women when I was very young, as part of the transformation of women. And so we need to look at that. If you were born in a rural area, there's so much to be done in our rural areas to not only keep our culture, but to create an economic base where people can stay where they were born. So that's what I think we need to do. But again, it's personal work. It's reading the books you're talking about. It's being in groups and talking about this. It's understanding that we have to break the shackles of oppression within ourselves and within our society if we're really going to allow people to reach their potentials.
Yes, yes. And then I want to just talk about organizations like CALMA, the Colorado Alliance for Latino Mentors and Authors. The importance of this, I cannot stress enough. People, I talk about CALMA every week, and I implore you, find out about CALMA. Reach out to us at the station. It's important because membership is growing. Be in the presence of awesome, intelligent, beautiful, awesome, creative men and women who are really making a change in this world. What other organizations are around that people might be interested in finding out about or being a part of?
Well, I do want to say about CALMA and because we've been talking some since you promote so many books, and CALMA is all of our authors in Colorado. And I keep saying, at last, Latinos have an intellectual class. That's very important because all change, I mean, you can take somebody like Cesar Chavez. While he wasn't educated at universities, he read, he studied, he talked to people, he did his personal work. He was always learning and growing.
Yes. And
so that's so important to us now, to be able to read, and the fact that we have this many authors in Colorado that are writing about our history, and they're writing nonfiction about our stories and trying to preserve our history. This is a first.
Yes.
To have this many people. So CALMA is very important. And so is educating ourselves, getting ready and educating ourselves. So it's something we can all do. I'm one of the founders of MICASA, and I was there the first 10 years, and that's an incredible organization. This is an important statistic. Latinos started 80% of the businesses between 2010 and 2020. We are entrepreneurs. We have that innovative, spirit that we can do things, and we are starting more small businesses than anyone else. And MICASA has a business center. So if people are thinking about doing a little business or want to get together and do a family business, they have a fabulous program for that, and they also do job placement and job training. So, I think that the main thing for Latinos to really understand is that personal advancement is an outside job. You got to say, no, I can do this and I will do this. True, and I think if you do that, you'll get the support you need. So I think MICASA is a real important organization. A group of my students just started something else that I think is interesting, and it's called Latina Gives. You can go online and see it. And it's we have young Latinos. There's a male and a female component to this. They're asking people, I give $50 a month. They're asking people to give money because we have to fund our own people. And if all of us do it, it's a tradition in Latino leadership that everybody gives un peso, 10 pesos, we used to sell burritos. We have to, in a sense, bankroll some of our own change. And so Latinos Gives, I'm really excited for them because what they're doing is they're asking people to contribute a little bit so that at the end of the year they can give money to Latino organizations that help other people. And I think that's kind of the spirit of Latino giving. So it's called Latinas Give. And the reason I'm so excited about it, it's all young people doing it. And so we need to look at how we can do that. I also think anything people can do to support immigrant rights, There's immigrant centers in Aurora and so forth that are across from the detention centers. And I think that's so important for all of us to do today. 40% of our growth in the last century was immigrants. When immigrants come in, one of the reasons we're not assimilating is because they revitalize the cultural core. They come in with the culture intact. They've never been minorities. They're proud of who they are, from Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela. And so they help us become more Latino in a sense and do those connections. So I think we all have a responsibility to help immigrants, because today there's been such a backlash against immigrants, and they're only here to work and to support their families and to look for a better life, like our people did, the ones that came from the South. So those are the kind of organizations I try to support. Anything that has to do with education, with immigration, with work, and making sure that we're doing our part to help others that don't have as much as we do, which kind of fits into this week, which is gratitude, which is also a great Latino leadership trait.
Yes.
Latinos are the most optimistic people in America. There's been studies done. We believe our life's going to get better, but we also have this great sense of gracias, or gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And, and that's important, because in the American culture, everybody always wants more, and they're buying things. And Latinos are told, gracias a Dios, be grateful for what you have.
For everything.
Everything.
Every night.
I'm even grateful for my hard childhood, because that's what made me the scrappy, resourceful, intelligent person. I have street smarts, and we look back on our lives and we think, oh my God, my mother was always working. Yes, she was always working, but look what she taught me. I can do anything. That's what she taught me.
Wow, yes.
If I put my mind to it, because she put her mind to it and she did it. So even our childhood and the things that we've gone through with oppression, we can make those our strengths. Because if we can overcome what we've overcome, our future looks bright.
That's great.
Looking good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think about the bitter times in our life, and then I think about a wonderful pumpkin pie, and you got to put some of that nutmeg in there, which tastes like that by itself. But when you put it in that pie, it's wonderful, and it does it. All those down times and all those beat up bruises, and all of those times we got our butt kicked, and they're behind us, and they have enriched us, and they have made us who we are, and made us more capable.
I always look at my mother's life and I say, if she could do what she could do, then I can do anything.
Man.
If our ancestors could do what they could do under such trying situations, when they had to work 6 days a week, and then we have their resiliency, their stamina, their determination, their vision, all of those qualities that it took to be able to do that. We have that, and so now we can use that to move us to the next level.
Juana, I'm sad to say that our time's about up. I could talk to you all day. I just love listening to you and your wisdom and your insight, and so much that you've contributed. Guys, you've been listening to Juana Bordas, the author of Latino Leadership. Her new book, Latino Leadership Ahora, is coming out on Cesar Chavez Day. Make sure that you get a copy of this book in your hand. It's so important that you get yourself educated on who you are, where you came from, what makes you who you are, and how can you share that with other people, because it's so critical at this time in our history that you are a part of it. In 100 years, they're going to read us. They're going to read about us.
Well, it's our time. It's Latino time. But as an elder, I want to send out a blessing to everyone who's listening, because just the fact that you're tuning in shows that you care, and shows that you want to learn, and shows that you want to contribute. And so many blessings to all of you on this Thanksgiving week for doing that. And one of the reasons I keep going and I have so much energy and faith is because of all of you. Because as I travel and teach, I see the Latino community coming of age across this country. And your children and my grandchildren will inherit a different kind of world because of our efforts. And I want to thank everyone.
Yes, thank you. Guys, I say it every week. I'm going to say it again. Everybody is looking for a hero or a shero. If you can't find one, be one. I just am so grateful to know you and to have you, to express your views on the show, And
Well, put me down to come back in April when my book's out, and I'll let them know how it's going.
hey, you got it. You got it.
Support a Latina author, because, you know, we need to also, only 10% of us ever make it to the higher levels of book selling, so I'm going to be one of them.
Right on. Right on.
Adios.
Okay. Have a great day, guys. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.